It's a magic switch with a gentle flick of the hand. The man is startled. The whole room is full of these switches. Each switch opens a random item. It's like opening a blind box. You never know what's going to come out. The man presses one of the switches. There's a clang. An orange tree falls out. The man flicks another switch. Another antique vase falls out. The man crashes and taps down and another peach appears. The man's name is Jack. He wakes up and is trapped in his room. Bored, he throws a random leather ball. But the next thing he knows, a plate of sushi opens up. The only thing that's missing is the dipping sauce. It's like eating noodles without seasoning. He pressed several switches in quick succession, but all that came out was sushi. At this point, he was so hungry, he had to pretend he had the dip and ate it. When he had finished all the sushi, bored, he pressed the switch again, and all that popped up was dip. Jack was a little angry. He flicks the switch next to him. Suddenly, paper sunglasses fall out. He puts them on and sees a child with wings. The kid kept accusing himself and Jack was overjoyed. He thinks this must be the switch to get out, so he pressed it excitedly. Suddenly the room went black. A huge countdown appeared behind him. Jack was instantly terrified. He pressed the switch furiously to stop, but the switches on the wall disappeared one by one. He looks up in disbelief. A giant peach crushes down. The next second, he came to his senses. He found himself in a secret room. He started reading the comic to pass the time. He finished 5 episodes in one sitting, but when he was about to read episode 6, he gets episode 7. And then, he presses 1 for episode 8. But there's no episode 6. It didn't feel like you were catching up on the show. He didn't give up and kept pressing the switch. The next second a secret door appeared behind him. Man trapped in a mysterious room. The walls are covered with mechanisms to open blind boxes. Pressing them would open various objects. He presses one at random. A hidden door appears behind him. When he reacts, he suddenly forgot which switch he had just pressed. He closes his eyes and makes a blind mistake. Suddenly, a dark-skinned man came out of it, slipping past his eyes. Then soon he was in the wall again. After many attempts, Jack finally found the switch to the hidden door. This was a thrill for him. He stood up and ran for the door. It turns out that the button pops back up on its own. Jack strikes a 100-meter sprint pose. He presses the switch and dashes out, but he's still a little too slow. He pulls out a fly swatter to close the distance, but he's still a step too late. He tries again with the rope, but each time he is just one step too late. By studying the switch, he found that if he pressed the switch, the door would stay open. He rushed to get a vase and pressed it against the switch, but the vase was so light that it was pushed up against the switch. He had a brainwave. Suddenly Jack had a great idea. Then he kept pushing the switch. He kept putting sushi into the vase, so he could add weight to it. But the next thing he knew, he couldn't lift the vase with all his strength. So he used his chopsticks to pull the sushi out one by one, until the flowers bloomed and then faded. Finally, he got the vase over. But then a new problem arose. He forgot which switch was on the door. At random he blindsided one, and the dark-skinned man comes out and kicks the vase. The next second, he was furious. He sticks sushi to the switch and actually opens the hidden door. But it didn't last more than a few seconds. Jack didn't give up. He took out another piece of strong tape and stuck the switch firmly to the floor. He also put several layers of tape on it. That's it, right? But as soon as he turned around, he pressed the iron plate against it again. Then he taped it to the floor, and then it went all the way to the door. After an unknown period of time, he suddenly flipped a switch. A rope fell out of the air. Jack was overjoyed. He had a way to get out again. Man grabbed the rope with all his might. Then his foot hit the switch. He swung straight through with a whoosh like a swing. Finally, he made it to the door. But Jack found that the hidden door wouldn't open. Upon closer inspection, a key was needed to open the door. Jack was instantly furious. Luckily, he reacted in time, otherwise he would have been crushed. Jack kicked the wall, and a key came off. Before he knew it, the key suddenly disappeared into thin air. He forgot which switch he just kicked, so he pressed a random one. It was so scary. Finally, he found the right switch. He was afraid he wouldn't remember, so he picks up the sushi from the floor and put it on the switch as a marker. He pressed it carefully. He made sure it was okay. Then he pressed the rope switch, but the rope was a bit short. He swung over and couldn't reach the key. Looking at the leather cork in front of him, Jack suddenly had an idea. He uses the cork to press the switch. Then he takes the key and opens the secret door, and he managed to fly through. But what he didn't expect was, he still couldn't open the door with the key. Jack looked up and saw. This made Jack almost swear. There was a combination lock on it. Angry, he threw the leather cork at it, but he hit a switch. The dark-skinned man rushed out again. Jack suddenly noticed that the dark-skinned man had 3 numbers written on his head. He rushed to put the numbers into the combination lock. He finally managed to open the door. He managed to get inside, but there was very little room behind the door. He was stuck in the door again. In the small room, he couldn't help but miss his time in the room. It was dull and boring, but at least there was nothing to eat or drink. A sudden gust of wind blew. He saw a crack in the wall, so he reached out and gave it a tug, and he opened a passage. He ran away frantically. He ran for 3 days and 3 nights. He finally made it out, but when he looked up, it was still a room full of switches. If you were in a room like this, how would you get out?